Okay. Selamat pagi Pak Dirjen, good morning Prof. Nizam.
Selamat pagi, good morning. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam. Okay, it's time. The time is 9:35, so we a little bit late for 5 minutes. Saya mohon izin untuk memulai kegiatan kita, Bapak.
Silakan.
Baik, ladies and gentlemen, as we are about to begin, we have a few housekeeping notes to make. So before we begin today's program, first, we would like to seek your cooperation in completing this webinar. Second, kindly switch off your speaker or make sure it on mute mode. To avoid interruption, and if you activate the camera, please make sure your condition is in a polite manner. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. It is our pleasure to be host for today's webinar with the title Australia-Indonesia Virtual Online Higher Education Policy Dialogue, Delivering Online Learning and Using Appropriate Technologies. I am Yulita Prioningsih and I will be the host for this event. We would like to extend our very warm welcome to the Director General of Higher Education, Professor Nizam, Director of Learning and Student Affairs, Professor Aris Junaidi, Education and Science Counselor, Australian Government Department of Education, Skill and Employment, Ms. Elizabeth Campbell-Dorning, Director of Engagement, Australian Tertiary Education, Quality and Standards Agency, Ms. Karen Traylor, and all the presenters from Monash University, Macquarie University, Flinders Queensland, 10 November Institute of Technology Surabaya, Indonesia Open University, Ganesha University of Education, all participants. We appreciate your taking time off your busy schedules to join us today. We hope we will learn a lot today. I would like to start this program with lafaz Bismillah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And for the first agenda, let's listen together Indonesian National Anthem, Indonesia Raya. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
The next,
Alhamdulillah. Saya sedang memimpin pikon.
Thank you. We're still waiting for Professor Nizam. Okay, thank you. For the To begin this webinar, we are pleased to invite Director General of Higher Education, Professor Nizam, to deliver the keynote address. Good morning, Professor Nizam.
Morning, Lita.
The screen is yours, Bapak. Please.
Okay, thank you very much, Lita and everyone. Yeah, first of all, I would like to, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to all of you. Salam sehat, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Dear Professor Aris Yunaidi, Director of Pelmawa, Pembelajaran dan Kemahasiswaan, Ms. Elizabeth Campbell Dorning, Education and Science Counselor Education and Science Counselor Education, Skills and Employment, DESE, Dr. Karen Trelor, Director of Engagement Standards and Agency, or TEXA, Professor Matthew Mundy from Monash University, Professor James Downs from Macquarie University, Prof. Shelley Kinas from University of Southern Queensland, Professor Greta Wilkinson from Flinders University, Assistant Professor Hasik Proyer from University of Technology Surabaya, Professor Ni Nyoman Padmadewi from University of Pendidikan Ganesha, Professor Tariano from Universitas Terbuka, and Dr. Muhammad Atri from Universitas Negeri Padang as the resource person for this session. First of all, I would like to express my appreciations for this initiative of having a webinar, a seminar on the use of technology and beyond, actually. We all know that during the last 1 year, our higher educations around the world has to transform themselves into using technology to maintain the delivery of courses. All of a sudden, everyone goes digital. All of a sudden, everyone goes online. It is, of course, in the beginning, quite shocking for everyone because not many universities are prepared to do online learning. But as time goes, we all get acquaintance with the use of technology for course delivery. We also see quite a lot of creativity coming out from our institutions, like many of our universities develop virtual reality, augmented reality for lab works, and the content of modules are also improving from time to time. We also set up the national repository for sharing coursework, for sharing course materials, and sharing courses between among universities. So this is a very good spirit of sharing, spirit of gotong royong that came out from the pandemics. And we also see quite a lot of activities because education is not just about knowing something, not just about learning a subject, but also it's basically develop the competency. Not only knowing, but also doing, character development, communications, collaborations, critical thinking, complex problem solving. So it's a lot more than just about learning a subject, which student can easily get from online materials available in zillions in the internet. But this human interactions of education is something that could not be simply bridged by technology. So in the past 1 year, we see the creativity of our university and also the activities outside the online learning. We have like the recon, the volunteers of students in helping with the pandemics. They do communications, providing informations to the community, educating the community on how to cope with the pandemics. They also help with the health workers. They also voluntarily help the community in providing them with hand sanitizer, with disinfectant. They made themselves. So it is really a good spirit of our students. and in thousands of numbers. For instance, in the Recon, the platform for student volunteer in health, more than 15,000 students joined the activities. In the Kampus Mengajar, the students teach their neighbors. Also, more than 15,000 students participate in this Kampus Mengajar program. So this, all this is part of education. Yeah, so it's not just about technology, not just about online learning, but how we can make sure that students develop their characters, develop the competencies through interaction, through social interactions, and through real work that they deliver, which indeed is the essence of education. And also Kampus Membangun Desa, the KKN thematic, in which students helps the rural area to help develop the rural village, and with the tourism, which is currently under a heavy pressure from the pandemic. And I see a lot of creativity comes out from that, like virtual tourism, and many creativity comes out from the pandemic. So I welcome this workshop, and I do hope that we can learn from the experience of Indonesia and Australia for a better future, and to engage with technology to enhance our learning. Terima kasih pada semua partisipan. Mudah-mudahan acara ini memberikan manfaat, memberikan sharing pengalaman, berbagi pengalaman untuk kemajuan pendidikan ke depan. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Nizam, for the encouraging remarks. Okay, now we are pleased to invite Education and Science Counselor, Australian Government Department of Education, Skill and Employment, Ms. Elizabeth Campbell-Dorning, for the opening.
Terima kasih Ibu Yulita. Selamat pagi Bapak dan Ibu-Ibu yang terhormat. On behalf of the Australian Embassy, I very much wanted to say thank you to the Ministry of Education and Culture for co-organising this webinar. Terima kasih Pak Nizam, Pak Aris and the whole team there at the Ministry. We're really so pleased to partner with the government of Indonesia on this initiative, and thank you to all 500 of you for joining us so far this morning and sparing your time to learn more about this topic on delivering online learning and using appropriate technology. Particular thanks, of course, to our expert speakers from Indonesia and from Australia, from the University of Technology Surabaya, Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha, Universitas Terbuka, Universitas Negeri Padang, and Monash University, Macquarie University, Flinders University, and the University of Southern Queensland. Especially thank you to Professor Daryono and Professor Shelley Kanash for joining us again. You were also on our last webinar on our panel, so thank you especially for continuing to support this initiative. Technology is at the heart of online learning. It's how we're interacting with so many students at the moment, but we know that not all students have the same level of digital literacy or digital access, and this can very much impact on the student experience, from engagement to achievement to retention. So we know that technology is a very valuable tool for us and can help us improve not just access to learning, but the quality of learning also. And as Pak Nizam mentioned, a real opportunity to find creative solutions to the future of higher education for our institutions, for our students, and for our governments also. reflecting on Pak Nizam's excellent keynote remarks, I just want to keep my remarks very, very simple. So we can have as much time as possible to hear from the experts, hear their insights and experiences in using technology to deliver online learning. So with that, I wanted to say welcome again and very much open the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Elizabeth, for the very warm opening remarks. Okay, before we move on to the next agenda, we would like to invite all our honored guest speakers and all participants to take a photo session. The organizing committee will take the photo, so please activate your camera. And our team will take the picture. Okay. I think we can hear the sound of the click of the camera. So it's feel real, the picture things. Okay. Sudah Mbak Anissa? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you Professor Nizam. Thank you Miss Elizabeth for the opening. So now we come to the main event of today's webinar, which we will discuss about delivering online learning and using appropriate oh, suddenly it's moved, sorry. Okay, delivering online learning and using appropriate technologies. And this session will be moderated by Miss Ida Puspita from Universitas Ahmad Dahlan. Good morning, Bu Ida.
Good morning, Bu Yolita. How are you
Before
today?
I hand over the next session to be moderated by Ida, I will read her brief biodata. Ibu Ida Puspita, she is currently lecturer at English Literature Department of Universitas Ahmad Dahlan, Yogyakarta. She also graduates from Universities of Wollongong, Australia for her master degree. Her latest position is as Head of International Cooperation, Universitas Ahmad Dahlan. Okay, Bu Ida, is you ready? The session is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Yolita, for the time given to me to facilitate our today's webinar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all presenters and participants from Indonesia. Good afternoon, speakers and participants from Australia. The Honorable Director General of Higher Education, Ministry of Education and Culture, Republic of Indonesia, Professor Nizam, Honorable Director of Learning and Student Affairs of Ministry of Education and Culture, Professor Aris Junaidi, the Distinguished Education and Science Counselor, Australian Government Department of Education, Skills and Employment, Ms. Elizabeth Campbell-Dorning, and the respectable speakers from Australia and Indonesia, and all the participants of our today's webinar. A very warm and hearty welcome to the Australia-Indonesia Virtual Online Higher Education Policy Dialogue, held in collaboration between Ministry of Education and Culture, Republic of Indonesia, and Australian Embassy, with the topic of delivering online learning and using appropriate technologies, seen from Australian and Indonesian perspective. I am Ida Puspita from Universitas Ahmad Dahlan. I am from Yogyakarta, as introduced by Ibu Yolita. It's my honor to be the facilitator or moderator of this seminar. And the topic of the webinar is very important, interesting, and also relevant to what we are experiencing at the moment in almost all higher education institutions in the world, especially in Australia and also in Indonesia, and especially after the pandemic of COVID-19. We're struggling to adjust ourselves in the teaching and learning process by using technology in the form of online classroom meetings. So during this webinar, we hope to learn new ideas and best practices from various fields and backgrounds from Australia and Indonesia to cope with the challenges for the lecturers and also the students. And I can see that there are so many participants in the Zoom room. It is a proof that this topic is really needed for the lecturers and to make the betterment in our online classroom. First of all, I'd like to briefly highlight the flow of the webinar. There are 5 speakers from Australia and 4 speakers from Indonesia who will be sharing their ideas, research, results, or experience in the topic. and there will be 4 sessions of the webinar. So the first session will be the 5-minute presentation of Dr. Karen Trelor, followed by the 10-minute discussion or question and answer. And then the second and the third session will be the time for our Australian colleagues and also Indonesian colleagues to present their ideas and also experience within the topic given today. And the question and answer session for the second and the third session of the speakers will be put in the last session of our today's webinar. We invite participants to type your questions in the link provided by the committee, and please mention your name and also your institution and to whom the question is addressed. And also do not forget to fill in the attendance list in the link provided by the committee as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Karen Trelor as the Director of Engagement, Australian Tertiary Education Quality and Standards Agency, or TEXA, to present the topic on tertiary education, Quality and Standards Agency's perspective on delivering online learning and using relevant technologies. Kindly allow me to read her short CV before passing the screen to her. Dr. Karen Trelor has a strong leadership strategy and collaboration skills. Her role at TEXA currently involves building and developing all elements of partnerships with international quality assurance agencies and governments. Karen's experience extends across all aspects of teaching and learning and the student experience. Karen has led TEXA's responses to many sector-wide initiatives in higher education, including the current focus on the quality assurance of online learning and academic integrity. Karen's team is also responsible for the highly successful TEXA conference. Karen continues to work on quality projects in other countries, including recent work with quality assurance experts in some countries like Oman, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Karen Trelor. Dr. Karen, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Ida. Good afternoon and good morning. I'm hoping that you can all see me and you can all hear me. My name is Karen Trelor. I work for the Tertiary Education and Quality Standards Agency in Australia. So we are responsible for the regulation of all Australian higher ed providers. Today, I'm just going to make some very brief introductory comments, and then I'm hoping that with all the hard questions you have, they can all be referred to my colleagues at Monash University, Macquarie University, the University of Southern Queensland and Flinders, and of course to the also to our Indonesian university colleagues. So in Australia, we're very proud of what we've done in online learning over a very long time. We have a very long and strong history in the provision of online learning. In Australia, we have a set of Australian higher ed standards, which I know I always wave at you all, but these provide a framework for quality education regardless of the mode of delivery, and these have held up really well over the pandemic. In Australia, we're also very focused in our curriculum work on how students are supported to achieve learning outcomes across any mode of delivery. As I know you have done in Indonesia, we, as a result of the pandemic, also developed an online learning good practice website. We have a repository of practical information that continues to build, and we've had a lot of inputs from our very good universities across Australia, and there are international contributions on that good practice website. So I refer that to you all for you to have a look at in your own time. In thinking about the topic today of designing an online learning materials, when we think about this from a regulatory perspective, we know that all providers in Australia must continue to meet the higher ed standards framework. We would expect to see that course materials that are developed are fit for purpose, that the course design allows for the achievement of learning outcomes, that there's a constructive alignment going on so that the tasks, the learning tasks and the assessments all align to the learning outcomes. We would expect to see that there's formative assessment practices in place and that students are provided with adequate feedback. We know from surveys that have currently been done and released in Australia that student support is very, very important outside of the formal teaching process. And we are, as a result of the pandemic and the feedback from students, very concerned about student safety and wellbeing. So from the perspective of a regulator, I think some of the questions that we would be asking when we're looking at learning materials and doing assessments of course accreditations, are the learning materials being developed making the best use of technology? Do staff have the necessary skills to teach online and to design a curriculum? And we know from previous discussions that this is a big issue across both Indonesia and Australia. So what assistance can be provided to assist staff in gaining skills to teach online? We believe that overall consideration needs to be given to the development of appropriate content, learning activities, and that assessment is at the appropriate qualification level. We would want to know what feedback mechanisms are in place, and how do we know that the online materials that have been developed are appropriate and that we've got students who are engaged. So what, in terms of quality assurance, what feedback loops are in place? And we have a big focus in Australia on academic integrity and contract cheating. So we would be looking to see what sort of practices are in place that mitigate against academic integrity and contract cheating. So from a regulatory risk perspective, I've just given a very brief overview of where and what we would be looking at in thinking about designing and using online technologies. We know that that this is not a face-to-face environment, so we know that different products need to be developed to teach online. And this is what my colleagues from the universities will be exploring with you further today. So that is just a brief outline of where we as the regulator would come from. We know this is not an easy task. We know that many of our staff still need training and development. We know that new products are being developed. And we also know that students are being a lot more vocal about good practice and what they want to see in an online environment. So I will take some questions there. Otherwise, I will hand back to Ida.
Thank you very much, Dr. Karen, for your presentation on the system provided by Australian government on the quality assurance of the online teaching and learning process. Yeah, I will check whether there is a question from the participants for Dr. Karen. Okay. Well, I'm afraid that there is no at the moment. So as the moderator, actually in Indonesia, we are not supposed to ask questions. Yeah. Because this is not, yeah, this is not talk show. But since there is no question from the participants, I'd like to maybe start.
Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, Ibu Liza.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Apologies.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Apologies in advance for not being able to visually show my camera, because right now I'm undergoing an exam online on my dissertation program.
Okay, Ibu Liza,
yeah, so,
do you have any question for Dr. Karen?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Please. Could you please mention your institution?
Right. Right now, I'm a doctorate student, come assistant lecturer at the UIN, Syarif Hidayatullah, Jakarta.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, hi, Mrs. Karen. How are you? How are you doing? How are things going? Great, I hope.
Oh, a lot better in Melbourne now.
Nice to hear that. And thank you also for our lovely moderator. And okay, the question I'm trying to allow me to pose this question. Right now, I think one of the most fundamental challenges, the problems that we are facing as a nation in administrating an online, a properly prosecuted online session is, when it comes down to it, we're talking financial aspect. Right now, a lot of my students, and also sometimes mostly they're really having a hard time procuring, even the quota, the credits itself, for making sure that the programs can sustain.
Yeah, Dr. Lisa. Sorry, Ibu Lisa, we cannot hear your voice. You're freezing. Hello, Ibu Lisa. Dr. Karen, can you hear?
No, I can't hear the question,
yeah.
so I can't answer it.
All right, so then I think we get, to make them time effective, I'd like to invite the other participants who would like to give question to Dr. Karen, if you have any. Well, I'd like to remind you that the questions should have been posted in the link provided by the committee in the chat box, if you can see that. So just to make the time effective. But to now, I cannot see any questions yet in the box. So is there any question from the participants? No question. So Dr. Karen, I'd like to maybe to trigger the question from the participants by giving you one question. You know, I am also the graduate from Australian University. At that time, the pandemic was not there. But at that time, university in Australia has been, you know, very engaged with online teaching and learning process. Where at that time, frankly speaking, especially in my institution, I don't know in the other institutions in Indonesia, that it's not a common thing to do, because we used to have like a physical interaction in the classroom. So I would like to pose a question: since when TEXA did the responsibility to oversee the quality assurance of all you know, online teachings in Australian institutions?
So this year, TEX has been in operation for 10 years, and
10
we
years.
have had responsibility since the higher ed standards were developed. So we have always had responsibility for all courses that regardless of mode of delivery. So all providers have to meet our standards regardless of mode of delivery.
So it could be online and offline delivery.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you do? I mean, how would you do the, you know, the mechanism of assuring the quality of the mode of delivery?
We have evidence requirements, and we would have a look at different evidence requirements according to mode of delivery. So if we were looking at an online course, we'd go and look at the learning management system. We'd talk to students. We'd look at the assessment to see if it's appropriate. Yeah. We'd look at the learning tasks and the learning outcomes to see if they're appropriate. So we very much customise. We know that we have some really good universities that have been doing this for a very long time, and we know that we had some smaller colleges that really struggled during COVID, as they had to transition from totally face-to-face to online. So we spent a lot of time and did a lot of work to support and educate those providers. We know that some students found it really hard, but also in different parts of Australia, there were different restrictions. So Melbourne was very locked down during the pandemic, but other parts of Australia, it wasn't quite as bad.
Okay, yeah. So did you do this once in a year or twice in a year for all of the Australian institutions?
So we set providers on a 7-year cycle.
Oh, 7-year cycle. Oh, okay, right. Okay, and there is a rank, yeah? Is there any rank?
No, we don't rank.
Okay, right, okay.
We've never ranked.
Yeah. That's what I salute from Australian education system, yeah. Okay, Dr. Karen, it seems that there is no questions from the participants, and I think the time is shown 10:12 a.m. in Indonesian time zone. So allow me to.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, one
Yes,
last question. Yes.
I'm really sorry because we got disconnected before earlier.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
really sorry about that. Yeah, it's
All
the
right. So
connection
is
unstable.
Ibu Liza?
I'm back on.
Yeah, okay.
I'm back
Lisa,
on, so I'm
could you
really sorry
please,
about before.
it's okay. Now, could you please directly ask the question to Dr. Karen, please?
Oh, already. Dr. Karen, actually, I was just wondering how you would go about the system financially speaking. I was really more drawn and curious to know how you mitigate the issue more towards the financial aspects of this matter. That's it. That's pretty much it. Okay.
I don't understand the question. So are you talking about?
I'm really sorry. Yeah. I mean, with the troubles that we're facing technically and principally, based on your experiences in Australia, what would you suggest? I mean, how would you tackle the issue? How would you tackle the financial aspects of the matter of the online? How do you tactically strategize the online learning process?
So what I think I'm not quite sure what you're after, but we have encouraged and we have seen a lot of sharing and good practice that has come out of the pandemic.
All right.
So we have seen a lot of universities sharing good practice with those particularly smaller colleges that don't have the expertise. I think before our first speaker before me, Dr. Nizam, spoke about how courses and course curriculums being shared. So I would say that that is an area where you could do more work if there are financial imperatives. We know that that online learning to be done well is not a cheap exercise, but we also know that there's sharing that can occur between education providers.
All right, great to know. Thank you so much, Dr. Karen.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello, Dr. Karen. My name is Aditya from Universitas Bunda Mulia. I would like to ask you about how we give explanation to the people with disabilities in hearing. I mean disabilities people, because sometimes when we give explanation from online learning, they cannot understand what the lecturer gives instruction or something like that. Is there any standard curriculum for disabilities people that have been done, maybe in Australia? Thank you.
I'd say we have disability standards in Australia, and I would deflect this comment somewhat to my speakers that are following because they're practitioners working in the front line. But in our standards, we say that, education needs to be accessible to all. So there are systems and processes and technologies which support online learning for people who are blind or deaf or have some other form of disability. And that needs to be catered for and is catered for by Australian universities across all forms of learning.
Oh, yeah.
So the speakers following will be able to give you more of a frontline view on how they support students with disabilities. So Australian universities also have lots of student support services and student advocates that are working with students and assisting them with learning. So I'm sure one of my colleagues following will be able to give you more illustrative examples.
Okay, because my
Aditya,
yes,
because we have a very limited time. Yeah. Can I give the chance to the other participants who have already sent their questions to the link? Thank you very much, Paditya. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paditya. Paditya, I can see your question. Actually, you have already posted that in the link. Yeah, you're lucky that you can directly ask Dr. Karen.
Okay.
Dr. Karen, we have a number of questions in the link, and I can only pick one question from hang on, from this one, from Itenas Bandung, Dr. Rosa Carnita. She was wondering how to create online learning strategies that can increase student engagement based on your experience. Yeah. Maybe during you assure the quality of the institutions in Australia, you can see how the Australian universities, create this strategy that can increase the student engagement.
I mean, in a very general sense, it's about accessibility of technology. It's about monitoring that the students are involved, monitoring that the students are responding, touching base with the students every few weeks. Again, my colleagues from the universities who are out there teaching every day will have strategies that they can share with you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Karen. So I cannot read all of the question, of course, because the time is quite limited. So I think that was the end of the session of our today's first session, Dr. Karen. We already have 3 questions from the participants, 2 directly to you and 1 from the list. So, and also some questions from the moderator. So is that okay if we finish your session today, Dr. Karen?
That's fine. And if anyone has any burning questions, you can email me at Texas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Karen, for your insightful sharing on the experience of Australia to deal with the quality assurance of the online teaching and also offline, in any delivery mode. And ladies and gentlemen, we have already finished with the first session of our today's webinar, and we are moving to the second session, which is about the sharing experience and also ideas from our Australian colleagues. And I'd like to invite the first speaker from Monash University. His name is Professor Matthew E. Mundy, as the Academic Director of Monash Online and the Deputy Head of Center for Professional Development and Monash Online Education. So in this session, there will be 5 speakers, and the topic will be elaborated within how to achieve interactive and effective learning, addressing digital literacy gaps, student engagement, support and retention, and case studies and sample resources in the practical field and medical sciences. Before passing the screen to Professor Mundy, let me read his short CV. So Professor Matthew Mundy is a cognitive neuroscientist, educator, and leader based in the portfolio of the Deputy Vice Chancellor Education at Monash University. Known for the digital and online education innovation and a passion for high quality teaching, Matt is recognized as an education leader. His key skill is his ability to infuse research-driven change into tertiary education through his understanding of the science behind learning and memory. Professor Matthew Mundy, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much, Ibu Ida.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and to give some of our impressions from Monash University on the topics that we're talking about. I thought I would give you a quick overview of how we at Monash answered some of those questions that our colleague Dr. Trelaw from TEXA posted in one of her last slides. How do we appropriately design courses for online, and I stress for online because I think there's a lot of suggestion out there that it's a case of taking existing material and putting it online, and it's actually far more complicated than that I'm sure we all know sitting in this meeting today. So how did Monash and Monash Online approach these sorts of issues? And to give you a bit of background, Monash University is a very large institution. We have multiple campuses, and being a large institution, we have very many academics who have been teaching in an on-campus mode for a very long time. That we had pockets of excellence in online teaching, but we didn't have a big area like Monash Online has become. And so the question is, how do we take academics along the journey with us in developing for online learning? And so my biggest kind of first tip is to start right from the beginning. So when you're developing a course from scratch, or if you're taking an existing course and putting it online, it's important to go right back to basics. It's important to start at the beginning. Even if you've already got a complete course, go back to the beginning. And that's because designing for online is a very different experience to designing something and delivering it in an on-campus setting. It's not just, as I said, taking material and putting it in the online space. You have to think about how it works. And I like to think of it in terms of, this isn't transforming information. This isn't translating information, rather. This is transforming it from one state into another. And there are lots of things about that process that faculty, academics may be very unfamiliar with. They have to be all of these things on the screen now: video editors, project managers, educational designists, analysts, content editors, copy editors. I mean, academics have to do a lot of these tasks now in order to put their material online. And that means you need to make a very considered, evidence-driven decision around how you do these things and how you integrate technology into doing these things. And so I like to start with a plan, start with a model, go back to basics in the development. Now, I don't need to tell you how to plan an education piece, right? I don't need to tell you how to plan a course or a unit. But what I'm suggesting is you need to think about how you plan that unit for online from the beginning, before you start creating it. And having that plan in the beginning is important. And the other bit I wanted to point out on this slide was evaluation. Now, it's unlikely that you'll get the most perfect product at the beginning, the first time round. You might, but it's unlikely. So evaluate and iterate. Take that evidence-driven approach to improving the student experience and improving those student outcomes. Use a framework. We all work again to educational frameworks. Go back to the basics and use a framework again from the beginning. Take your learning outcomes and apply your new understanding of online learning to figure out what you need to do to teach your students in this format. And the reason I have this slide here is of those two conditions of learning that we need to take into account when we're creating instructional events. So we take our standard learning outcomes and we need to acknowledge some things. We need to acknowledge that our online student brings a different set of knowledge, a different set of motivations, a different way of attending to that material. They're choosing to do online because they're a different type of individual potentially. And so we need to acknowledge that in our design. The external conditions for their learning are different. Obviously, they're learning in a different place. They might be at home. They might have surroundings that might not be perfect for learning. You might need to take that into account. And of course, your methods of instruction need to be different. It's a different platform. You can't stand in a room and talk. You have to use formats like this. So at Monash Online, we came up with a set of guiding principles. Now, these are just some of them, and not all of them are relevant for what we're talking about today. But the point is, create a shared understanding at the institution level, at your university level, of what you're trying to achieve by putting your material into the online space, what you want for students to study online, what should be a shared set of principles, a shared understanding of design that you would like in this space. And so we've gone for statements like a rich and supportive ecosystem for learning. That speaks to the fact that online learners need more support. They are at a further distance from you. They're at a further distance from the support structures of your physical infrastructure at campus. They need a supportive ecosystem in this space. We need to be able to minimize the challenges of learning online, take away the friction of using technology, take away the friction of having to hop from one system to another system, and to synchronize those things. we're choosing to contextualize students' learning in their personal and work lives. And that's because the usual Monash online student will tend to be older. They'll tend to have life experience. They will have life commitments, and there are things around their career progression that they can build into their experience in this circumstance. The message there is know your learner. So I'm rapidly running out of time, so I will go through some very quick, I don't know, tips, best practice, I guess, things that I find most useful to speak with academics about when they're designing online learning. And so my first big tip is to design with cognition in mind. Now, my background is in cognitive psychology, so I would say that, but thinking about putting information in the online space, we need to understand that the student absorbing this information is doing it in a different way and at a different time to a student that will be doing it in a face-to-face context. We know from cognitive psychology that in order to learn something effectively, actually we need to learn in chunks, in small little pieces. So it's not the case that you can take a 2-hour didactic lecture, record it, and put it online. That's not going to be an efficient way of creating a learning piece. You need to break that down. You need to put it into 4 to 10 minute chunks. Ideally, 20 minutes is okay. Any longer than that, and it means that an individual has more friction in trying to learn. Make time between those chunks for consolidation. Have tasks that are broken up so that the student can do something else, and that helps with the learning. Present information through both visual and auditory channels. We have 2 separate systems in our brain of learning, a visual and an auditory, and if you can separate, it actually increases the bandwidth. More can be learned by doing that. On the point of video, it's tempting to think video is a replacement for pretty much everything online. Just record it and that's fine. But a good video can actually be really time consuming. Doing it well, doing it appropriately can be very time consuming. Now, one thing to say is a lot of us have one of these, right? And a video recorded on something like this can be just as good as a studio recorded video. Something done in 10 minutes can actually achieve the learning outcomes in the same way as something you might spend weeks doing in an editing studio. So think about why you might want to do a video. Think about what's the purpose, what's the message, what do you actually want to teach by using this format. Software comes later. You choose your software depending on what you want to achieve with the video. Is it something simple? Is it something you could do on a phone? Or is it something you need a studio for? Interactivity. How do you appropriately engage interactivity in the online space? And again, my message is know why you want that interactivity. Choose that first. Choose the learning purpose first before choosing the platform. Is it to check students' knowledge? Is it to demonstrate is it for students to demonstrate their understanding? Is it to learn from each other, or is it to explore content? And there will be different tools and different activities, different platforms that you can choose depending on which your purpose is. And I can go through specific examples if you like, but I've only got 10 minutes. I'll share these slides with you, and all of these links work to the various technologies that link out to the various technologies that we've explored. And almost finishing up here, how do we use synchronous engagement? And by synchronous engagement, I mean live teaching, like in this sort of format, because much of online learning would be in an asynchronous format. Uploading into an LMS, even interactives in an LMS would be asynchronous. How to appropriately use synchronous engagement. And again, it's tempting to give a 2-hour lecture. That I would suggest is not the right thing to do in the online context, because synchronicity or synchronous learning and synchronous engagement really benefits that social activity side of online learning, getting students together, their faces in a room, talking to each other. And if it's just you doing the talking, then it's not them learning from each other. So use the synchronous time as a social engagement activity. Discuss issues that are reasonably low complexity, but will create that sense of community within your students. And also use it for them to plan their tasks, for them to be able to discuss in an asynchronous format later. So plan group activities, for example. I'm going to leave it there because I note I'm running out of time. Just one final tip. I really like Google Jamboard as a group collaborative tool. It's an incredible incredibly simple digital whiteboard and creates an interactive template for students to be able to share ideas and for you to be able to work with them in a digital format. So if there's any one piece of software I would recommend, I'm really liking Google Jamboard at the moment. And finally, form a community amongst yourselves. So as educators, as people who are creating online content, you can learn from each other all the time as the sharing concepts that have come up already within your own institution group together, learn from each other. It's a very powerful way of ensuring that we learn about all aspects of what we're doing and share all of this information together. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Matt. Very effective time management, yeah, 10 minutes. So yeah, thank you very much for your remarkable experience, sharing experience about the, top tips of learning, online learning design from Monash University. So there will be questions, I believe, from the participants, but again, I'd like to remind the participants to please unmute yourself when you're not presenting, and also type your questions in the link provided by the committee that we are going to discuss later on after the session from Australian speakers and also Indonesian speakers finish. So ladies and gentlemen, I am keen to hear the experience from our next speaker from Macquarie University, Professor James Downs, the Associate Dean of Learning and Teaching, Faculty of Science and Engineering. And he completed his PhD in Boston University, United States of America. And his recent research builds on his materials, fabrication, and electronics expertise in an effort to build integrated quantum sensitive vector gravity sensors using levitated micromasses. Professor Downs, the floor is yours, please.
Thanks very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Or you'll disappear off my desktop?
We can hear you clearly, Professor Downs.
Okay, very, very good. Okay, so hopefully you can see my PowerPoint now as well. So I think mine, I've learned a bit from Matthew's presentation, and I'll build on that. And I guess we have a different position here. So Macquarie University until COVID was primarily a face-to-face teaching institution, especially in science and engineering where I am, because we have laboratory classes and we have students trying to figure out maths problems. We have engineers building robots and things like this. And so mostly it was face-to-face, but we got forced into online in COVID, just like everyone else in the audience here. And this is getting us to think about some of the issues that we have with our face-to-face teaching and how we can use technology to maybe switch to a hybrid or a fully online model that achieves the learning outcomes that we want and better for the students in the end. And so what I'll be talking about today is a bit of an experiment that's ongoing at the moment. And it may look a little bit inaccessible maybe to the general population, but it's surprisingly it is actually generally quite accessible. So I'll explain how that is in the end. Let me just see if I can get, okay, so let's have a look. I've jumped ahead. So the problem from my perspective is we have, as I think probably everyone in the audience that's in a tertiary sort of science context here, we'll have an introductory mathematics course, which bridges between high school and tertiary mathematics with calculus, okay? And the issue that we have, and you all have, I assume, is that we have a diverse incoming cohort. We have school leavers with no senior high school mathematics. We have school leavers with senior mathematics only and no calculus, and we have non-school leavers with, well, who knows what, arriving on campus. This unit services sciences, engineering, computing, medicine, business, and education. So it's really the funnel that takes all the maths interested students in and tries to bring them up to a certain standard before they enter the mainstream classes. Here we go. This is a class for us. It's a large service class. It's about 800 to 1,200 students per offering. It is used to be in a conventional format, which was last year was recorded lectures, online tutorials that sort of represent content with 30 students per teacher, online workshops where they practice problems, that's 30 students per teacher, and an online exam. And I see the conversation going on in the chat about online exam issues, which is very much an issue here. But in this format, we have all the conventional issues also. We have the engagement that drops off. We have students that are required really to self-manage access to any remedial work, and we have high fail rates, high repeat rates, and it's expensive because there's a lot of marking required. So I'd summarise that as not successful. So where are we heading? What's our experiment? So our experiment is looking at artificial intelligence technology in a tertiary teaching environment. And so artificial intelligence and machine learning is going on our phones as we speak, searching through all our photos and categorizing them and things like that. But how does this apply to education, and how can we use it in education to get a much better online experience for our students, a much more effective online experience? In education, we typically see this at the moment in terms of sort of chatbot interactive systems that are using text analysis to learn correct answers from tutors and then parrot them back. And that can be quite sophisticated. So in Australia and in University of New South Wales, there is quite a sophisticated engineering tutor system that can provide mathematics feedback to students as they're doing engineering problems. Very useful. We also see this in the terms of auto marking of assessment items and text, maths-based things. We also see it in terms of analytics systems that are used to identify at-risk students from patterns in their engagement and their marks. But these are all really sort of support for learning only. They don't really get into the actual learning process, which is what we're interested in. So how can we do something about the actual learning process? So the goal here is that in Math 1000, we have the issue that we really have, if you look at what's going on, is that we have many different pathways through the content that students want to take depending on their background. We have varying speeds of skill acquisition in our students, and so a sequence of lectures is not very useful to them. We have differing remedial support requirements for all the different students. So if you really wanted to find a gold standard solution to this, you'd probably say that a personalised learning pathway would be best. And who does that best but a skilled teacher, as we all know in this audience here? But if you have 1,000 students, you can't provide individual skilled teachers to them all. That's the problem. But what's just arriving on the scene now is essentially an artificial intelligence-based online learning management system that can emulate sort of teacher-style adaptation of content. It can adapt formative assessment. It can adapt speed of delivery and reinforcement patterns in the assessment and the content. And it can also build in summative testing with mastery testing, so repetitive and time testing to check for mastery as we go along as well. That's the dream, right? So can we realise it? So how does it work? So what we're doing is we've reformatted the curriculum completely and looked at the pedagogical design. We've broken it into modules, which makes things easier for everyone, students and the system. Loading it into a 24/7 AI adaptive learning system. It's actually a commercial system. I'm not going to give their name here because I didn't get clearance to do that, but it's state of the art, brand new. We have integrated auto marking and formative assessment, integrated mastery testing in the modules, and we have online workshops that happen outside of the classroom. And I'll talk outside of the online. I'll talk about that in a second as to why that's there. The AI system doesn't happen by magic. There's a lot of academic work behind that to get it there, but it's preloaded with the content and an assessment pathway, basically. It has adaptive testing and revisiting concepts, and it has learning psychology adaptive delayed recall testing. So, you know, going into the next topic and then coming back and checking students still remember the previous topic built into the pathway. And all of this is sitting on a system that actually adapts and sort of learns not just how the cohort of students works, pathway, but also adapts to the particular type of student that's going through the work at the moment. Okay, so adapting in multiple ways. So being a physicist, I can't help a nice big diagram to try and explain what's going on. I'll try and speak over. In a conventional class or unit, as we call it, we'd have serial content. We'd have content that's laid out in the line for students to work their way through, either synchronous with us or asynchronous in an online platform. We'd have assessment that sits alongside of this, where the students are tested as they go along. That's a mixed formative, summative in science and engineering in general. And then at the end, we'd have an exam, a sort of a cliff-face exam, we'd call it. This is, is problematic in the online format for many reasons, but least of all, that exam is very problematic in the end. What's the AI system look like? And so I've drawn two versions here. So the AI for a weak student has content with formative assessment built into it. And that formative assessment is adaptive and randomized to counter academic integrity issues that Karen mentioned. And it has periodic summative assessment built into it as the students go along, but it allows the students, as they need to loop back in the content as guided by the machine or by themselves with the system watching them as they work through the content. But at the end of each module, they sort of get to a summative point and they get mastery signed off essentially. And in the weak one here, if I could point, I'll point for you, but you can see there's a remedial loop where a student really has shown the system that they can't figure out what to do. So we take them out on a remedial loop automatically and then bring them back into the mainstream system. And then they move sequentially through the course to the end. And all the summative assessment happens inside the modules. There's no final exam now. For a strong student, this looks a bit different. For a strong student, the system will pick up that they actually understand the content quite well. We'll move through the content faster and we'll test them maybe ahead of time to see whether they already understand the content that they're working through. That allows them to work through the course much more quickly without getting frustrated with the work that's going on, without waiting for the rest of the students really. But is this the complete package? It's a whirlwind tour of what AI adaptive learning looks like, but is this really a complete package, especially in maybe in my area of science engineering, where we have students that want to have hands-on interaction? And I'd also say that many students that we receive here are straight from high school classrooms, so they're used to a very interactive environment. They need inspiration, they need motivation, and they need engagement. They're all critical elements for success in these programs. So the human element is very much still required in such a system. And what that takes the form of is scaffolded online workshops that solve relevant and difficult problems that relate directly to the content that they can access online in the LMS system. And that's really there for skill development, which means putting all the concepts that they've learned online into action in real problems, which is equally important. There's no use learning all the content if you can't actually put it into action. So that's my whirlwind tour of AI science teaching, or mathematics teaching in this particular case. We'll be branching out into science. And it's surprisingly achievable because most of the design elements are already being done by the academics that are in this meeting. And the technology is now catching up with us, where we have commercial systems which you can sort of download the pedagogy into and set up for our students to operate online. And so really, I suspect this is probably the future of online education, in our opinion. We'll see how that goes. It's a bit of an experiment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. 10 minutes, yeah, sharp. Your presentation is, for me, myself, is quite new, yeah, about artificial intelligence, because we come from different backgrounds. That's why I myself and also all the participants would like to know more about that during our discussion later. There will be some questions from the participants. And as the moderator, I'd like to again remind you, all of the participants, please kindly unmute yourself when you're not presenting, because your voice kind of disturbing during the presentation of our speakers. Thank you very much for your kind cooperation. So I'd like to now invite the third speaker from Australian colleagues from University of Southern Queensland. And it's really interesting to know that University of Southern Queensland is 75% of the students learn entirely online. So we are going to hear the perspective of Professor Shelley Kinash, as the Director of Advancement of Learning and Teaching at the University of South Queensland, to share her experience. And let me read her short CV. Professor Kinash has been an academic for over 25 years and completed her PhD in Education Technology through the University of Calgary, Canada. She led and co-led 3 high-impact national research projects competitively awarded through the Australian government. Office for Learning and Teaching on graduate employability, postgraduate student experience, and closing the loop on student evaluation of courses and teaching. So ladies and gentlemen, let's turn the screen over to Professor Kinas, please.
Thank you so much. And can you hear me okay and see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you and my fellow Australian colleagues and Indonesian colleagues to this session today. As with the previous speakers, I will be talking about delivering online learning and using appropriate technologies from the Australian perspective. I've used the question stems that our organizers kindly sent to us as questions. So first, how to achieve interactive and effective learning. The first thing that I want to emphasize is a theme that's been coming out throughout this afternoon in terms of that infrastructure around that it takes a village. In addition to the teachers and the learners, there's a lot of other supports that are needed in order to make this happen. So one of the things that we've found really, really important, especially when so many people had to pivot and mobilize online learning so quickly, and even at a university like ours, where we have a lot of online learners and we take a digital approach, going completely online still took some unawares, unawares, and they needed extra supports. So we've developed a new learning and teaching induction, which it takes 30 minutes, it's mandatory, it's online, and it's paid. And there are annual refresher modules. So a refresher module that we've put into place is academic integrity and how to ensure academic integrity online. But making sure that all staff take this 30 minutes to really learn about what matters in particularly online learning and supporting students. We've also put into place what we call collegial observation of learning and teaching, and other people call peer observation or peer review of teaching, where we have academics across discipline areas, so from different disciplines, observing one another's online teaching so that they can give feedback and observations and ideas to one another to help each other grow. We also have foundations of learning and teaching. So this is these are online modules. There's 9 hours, and we pay our casual educators to take these 9 hours. So it's really important that everyone knows how to engage the students online, etc., and how to support the students. So we've put together modules for our casuals so that when people aren't our ongoing, continuing academics, that we're supporting the casuals who come in from industry to teach with us. Technology demonstrators. So talking about the technology of online learning, an approach where everything goes can be quite confusing for students. So what we want to do is achieve that balance between not overwhelming our students and our educators, but not stifling innovation. So when we have an educator who wants to try a new approach, education technologies are coming out all of the time. When someone wants to try it, we have a mechanism where they pilot it in their courses with their students in the ongoing, and they evaluate it as they're going along. And then we make decisions as to whether to scale that up and try it in other disciplines. Another example of support, we have a hub, we call it the Hive, Hub for Immersive and Virtual Experiences. And that's where we try out the higher tech things, like the previous speaker was just talking about in terms of artificial intelligence, using virtual reality for teaching, etc. And we have people try that with their actual students in their actual disciplines before we make decisions as to whether to roll those out into our business as usual across our institution. The next question is how to address literacy gaps, focusing on the students. And I wanted to particularly, choosing literacy, I wanted to stress accessibility. And so when people have who are blind or deaf, but also beyond that. So the framework that I like to use is Universal Design for Learning, UDL. And I've put a link in the chat box, but also here on the slide. And I believe that the slides will be available post this webinar to a reading about Universal Design for Learning. What UDL means is that we proactively put design into place for people who need it, for the students who need it most. So we make sure that our blind students are going to be able to access the materials, that they'll be able to listen to them, that our deaf students will be able to read them, etc. And what happens is research shows over and over that that benefits all of the students. So if you're a mature age student who's working and has children and your eyes are sore at the end of the day, or if you're from a non-English speaking background and you're learning in English and you're not sure that the words that you think you're hearing are the words that you're actually hearing. So there's three propositions: multiple means of representation. And that means that the educator puts things intentionally on the online learning site in multiple modes. So there are videos, there's podcasts, and there's text archive scripts for the video so that you can read it, you can listen to it, you can watch it, you can engage with the material in multiple ways. There's also multiple means of engagement, and that means how we engage our learners. So we know for many learners, if it's not assessed, if it's not worth marks, they're not engaged to learn it. We know others, if it's not explicitly linked to what comes after the university education, to credentials and employment, they're not motivated. Others are motivated by that cognitive engagement and really learning. So we need to make sure that we explicitly tie in different ways to engage the students. And multiple means of expression, while representation is what we as educators give to the students, expression is what they give back to us, usually in the form of assessment. And so what we like to do, particularly in online learning, is really allow the students to express themselves in the way that represent them best. So while they have the specifications and the requirements for the assessment, how they format that is up to them. So whether they create a video or an essay or a website or whatever's going to work best for them. Just watching my time, I see I have just under 3 minutes left. The third question is how to achieve student engagement, support, and retention. So quickly, I like to think about engagement like being engaged to be married, because it's a really good way to remember what engagement really means. It means care and commitment. It means being two-way. It's not just, if we don't engage as educators, how do we expect our students to engage? So it's engaging with them. And it's engaging through assessment, because we do know, research shows and our experience shows that the one thing that students are going to engage with is the assessment that's worth marks. So making sure that we're making that assessment robust learning activities so that they're engaging with that activity. Support is through the co-curriculum. So making sure, right from our introductory speaker today, we heard that there's more to it than the educator and the students. There's lots of supports for learning alongside, and we need to acknowledge and support that. And finally, retention. The keys to retention are that students feel that they belong in that higher education experience, and that they feel that they belong beyond graduation. So they have career purpose throughout. In my final just over 1 minute, I just wanted to alert you to some case studies and sample resources so that you can go further. I will play this video because it's just 1 minute.
What's distinctive about USQ's learning and teaching approach? Learning comes first.
A joke can be used to explain A boy with a dog says to a girl, "I taught my dog to whistle." The girl tilts her head towards the dog and listens. After a few moments, she says, "But I don't hear anything." The boy responds, "I said I taught him to whistle. I didn't say that he can whistle." This joke illustrates what can happen when teaching comes first. Teaching is only effective if students are learning. Learning means that students know more than they did before, knowledge, can do more than they could before, skills, and have become more than they were before, attributes. At USQ, we pay attention to who our students are, what needs they have, and whether they are learning. If our students are not achieving success, we adjust our approaches.
This is another example. I won't click on the link, but you can play with it later. And this is an example of 3D photography. So if you click on the link, for students who can't come on campus, each of these little symbols open up a text box and explain. And you can navigate around this 3D room and have a virtual tour and explain on your own, explore on your own. This is our digital first menu, and it's open to all. So it's digitalfirst.usq.edu.au. And as you go in, these are really ordinary approaches. So if you click on teaching approaches, one of the ones that we're putting up next is how to engage with students via Zoom, like we're doing right now. And so if you click into these boxes, it shows you actual examples from our courses about other ways to teach besides lecturing. These are learning and teaching resources. So as Karen's presentation showed, TEXA put together an online learning good practice website. And so this is USQ's contribution to that good practice. So we've put together a whole bunch of different resource materials that we share with you for your use. And that's the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Shelley. It was a very interesting video, when you highlight the importance of the word learning, not only teaching. And I was amazed seeing the last slide of your presentation that you put the learning word in front, not the teaching one. So we are going to discuss more about that later in the question and answer session. And now I am really interested in listening to the experience of our last speaker, but not least from Australian side, Professor Greta Wilkinson from Flinders University. So let me read her short CV. So Professor Greta Wilkinson is the Associate Director Online Learning and Teaching from Flinders University. Within the Center for Innovation in Learning and Teaching at Flinders University, Professor Wilkinson oversees the online learning and teaching team that leads and supports high-quality online and blended learning and teaching, and provides services including learning design, e-learning support, and professional learning in digital learning. She has 17 years experience in online learning within Australian higher education institutions. Her presentation today will highlight the broad range of necessary institutional considerations to support positive learning and teaching experiences for students. Professor Wilkinson, the screen is yours. Can you hear my voice?
Thank you. Yes, I can. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Just finding the unmute button.
All right.
Can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to talk today and share our experiences in digital learning. I have chosen to share a particular case study at Flinders University, and slightly different to the other speakers in that this is an institutional perspective on digital learning. So at Flinders, we have developed a digital learning framework, and that for us outlines the overall framework of necessary enablers for digital learning, including fully online learning, but also the use of digital learning in an on-campus setting in our topics and courses in a very high quality way. So as we know, the use of technology to support education is becoming an essential approach to ensure a contemporary, innovative and supportive learning environment. And the use of that technology can take many forms and is tied to various modes of study. So to define this from the Flinders perspective, we actually use the word digital learning to refer to the use of digital technology to enhance learning. And this can encompass all modes of delivery, including our fully online, but also our on-campus learning, recognising that there is value in the use of digital tools to enhance that face-to-face experience. Flinders is primarily an on-campus face-to-face university with some targeted online courses, primarily in the postgraduate space, but like many institutions across the world, had a mass move to move our teaching online during 2020, and we're building on that in 2021. So this framework is designed to ensure that the systems, technology and support mechanisms are in place to both expand and improve the learning experience for all. And to meet our regulatory requirements. So we didn't just make up the framework. It's actually based on a benchmark document for technology-enabled learning developed by the Australasian Council for Open and Distance and E-Learning, ACODE Council. The benchmarks through ACODE are publicly available and are intended to assist institutions in taking a continuous improvement approach. And they draw attention to the breadth of requirements at an institutional level for technology-enabled learning. So the benefits of utilising the ACODE model to underpin our framework is that it's had considerable development over the last 15 years. It's well recognised both nationally and internationally, and it also provides the opportunity to identify and track progress and can be used for benchmarking with other institutions. The benchmarks don't address all of the full broad range of the higher education standards within Australia that Karen was talking about earlier. And so therefore we have made adjustments to suit the particular context at Flinders, and I would strongly encourage this approach to any institution. The framework also aligns with the good practice guidelines from TEXA that Karen referenced earlier and that obviously Shelley has contributed to. So the framework encompasses the key items that are the topic of this presentation today, including interactive and effective learning, student engagement, support and retention, and also addressing the digital literacy gaps. And the value of a framework is that it can be applied to an institutional context and used to inform the development of a digital learning work plan, which is exactly what we've done at Flinders. So within the strategy and governance component of our framework, this is where we focus on establishing a well understood strategy for digital learning. We ensure that our governance mechanisms are in place and policies that support and guide the selection, deployment and evaluation and improvement of the technologies used to support learning and teaching are well in place. In terms of the quality component of our framework, this is where we support and encourage the sustainable and effective and efficient use of digital learning through our strategic planning processes at all levels of the institution. The focus here is on continuous improvement through systematic and regular evaluation of implementation strategies and outcomes. And it's in this category that Flinders in particular have done some work on defining what we mean by digital learning, as I was indicating before. We've also developed a series of digital learning guidelines that are aimed to provide guidance to staff in terms of how to design quality digital learning experiences for our students. And we implement a continuous improvement approach. So the sorts of items you'd see in this area would speak to effective learning and also in student engagement by ensuring that quality processes and structures are in place. Within our systems component, this is where we focus on the technical infrastructure, both the physical and the virtual, and ensuring that it's aligned with our institutional learning goals and that the technology is a resource resourced support staff are trained and the infrastructure is implemented, maintained, administered and supported effectively and efficiently. So the sorts of items you would see in this area speak to interactive and effective learning with a focus on the capability of the technology suite and the alignment with the educational strategy. So within this component, we've undertaken a lot of work to ensure that our technology is aligned with our digital learning vision, and we have developed a technology roadmap that will see us through the next few years in terms of the advancement of our technology systems. Under pedagogical application, this is where we ensure that the application of digital learning is grounded in the institution's teaching and learning strategy, and it's informed by good pedagogical practice and research, and it's supported and deployed, promoted effectively, evaluated and advanced. So the sort of items you'd see in this area speak to interactive and effective learning with a focus on teaching practice. So in this area is where we have developed a series of learning and teaching principles that are centred around the student, ensuring that our teaching practice is authentic and accessible, active and innovative. We have a series of good practice guides that are aimed to support our staff in designing and delivering those types of experiences. Within the staff development and support component, this is where we see quality learning and teaching brought about where our people are confident, enthusiastic, skilled, well supported, and learning experiences are designed to engage the learner and employ a variety of approaches. So the sorts of items you'd see in this area speak to interactive and effective learning and also digital literacy of our staff by ensuring that teaching staff themselves are actually well supported and have good levels of capability in designing and delivering digital learning experiences for students. So in this area, we have a library of tip sheets that speak to pedagogical approaches to digital learning and accessibility, which I know has been a topic in the chat during these presentations. In terms of student TEL training and support, this area speaks to the provision of student training for the effective use of the institution's digital learning services and is aligned with the digital learning as defined by our standards. This area ensures that this is appropriately resourced and coordinated with other student services and is flexible and focused on the needs of the students. So the sorts of items you'd see in here would speak to student engagement, retention and digital literacy. And some of the initiatives we've got underway in this space are around orientation, particularly online orientation options for students and the creation of student communities. The last component here, student support services. In here, we're ensuring that students can contact and interact with academic and student support services either on campus or online in any format they require. This is broader than just digital literacy and includes academic skills, health and counselling, disability, financial, library service, academic integrity support. So in this space, we've done a lot of work on digital literacy and ensuring that our academic skills support is available to our online students. And this particular area you'd see speaks to student engagement support and retention by ensuring that students are well supported more broadly as they engage with the higher education institution. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Greta. Very excellent, because only one slide you can cover almost all of the topics provided in this webinar. So yeah, and also it's a benchmarking for Indonesian universities, so that we can see your presentation on Flinders Digital Learning Framework. Dear participants, please kindly unmute yourself. I can still hear the noise background. Yeah, thank you very much. So Professor Greta's presentation is the conclusion of the presentation from Australian side, and we have heard.
Ibu Ida, mohon maaf, suaranya termute.
Oh dear. I'm so sorry. I've been talking quite many minutes, and then I just heard that you know, my somebody told me that my voice is on mute. Yeah, so sorry. So Professor Greta, did you hear my comment on your presentation, or? Oh, okay, right. Okay, my dear participants and also speakers, we have already heard the experience from Australian perspective on the topic of our today's webinar. And now I'm keen, and also all of the participants, all speakers from Australia would like to hear the experience from Indonesian perspective. And I'd like to invite the speakers from Indonesia one by one to also share their ideas on the topic of our today's webinar. The first opportunity will be given to Dr. Haziq Fabroyer from University of Technology Surabaya. Dr. Fabroyer is the head of section for implementation of application integration, Department of Informatics and Directorate of Development of Information Technology and System. He completed his PhD at National Taiwan University of Science and Technology. And Dr. Haziq, I'm turning over the screen to you, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Bu Ida, for the greetings and for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. May peace be with all of you. Hopefully you can see my screen right now. I'm personally thankful and grateful for Professor Mundy, Professor Downs, and Professor Kinach, and Professor Wilkinson for their sharing about how to deliver the online learning using appropriate technologies. Now, please allow me to share my thoughts, my personal experience by giving you about 6 practical tips in delivering online learning effectively and okay. All right. But before we move to those 6 practical tips, I would like to talk about the basic principle, the basic foundation about this speech. So we depart from this particular perspective. We actually, throughout our history, we move from physical environment to the digital environment. So starting with the totally physical things, and during the physical era, everything that we learn, we should observe it at the moment, at the place. So there's no such remote learning at that time, of course. And now it's a totally different era, totally different situation. Especially during this pandemic, it's almost impossible for us to meet each other face to face. That's why the digital learning will benefit a lot, all of us, right? Particularly in this occasion, I would like to share with all of the audiences about how to achieve interactive and effective learning, especially in online condition. Starting with the interactive one. So we would talk, when we take a look on our English dictionary, interactive is about a mutual, about some active activity, and then some actions from our user. And it should be reciprocally, means that it should be in 2 ways. And that's why during this interactive learning, we need to consider about the communication, the interaction between 2 parties in these 3 categories. So for example, we have a collaboration or interaction between student, and then student and teacher, and student and content. All of these items, we should consider all of them. So we cannot only concern about the interaction between us, the teacher, and the student, but we also need to put more attention on the student interaction, and also the student and the learning content interaction. All right. Now, let's go with the first tips. In order to deliver some interactive learning, based on my personal experience, giving the students some paperwork will benefit them, will enhance their learning. Okay, so we can, for example, ask them to draw something with respect to the topics that we would like to deliver during this learning. So it's contextually. So it depends on your case. In this class, just like depicted on the figure on the right side, it was a human-computer interaction class. And I asked the students to draw, I'm sorry, this is computer graphics class. And I would like to I asked them to draw lamps. And it's very interesting and very fun. And with this kind of activity, I believe we can deliver some interactive learning. This is tip number 1. Tip number 2, we can conduct, or we can bring up some engagement within our students by simply allow them to unmute themselves. So do not restrict them, do not restrict their access towards their microphone and camera. In my personal case, I believe that they would not, they understand the rules, so they will unmute, they will mute themselves if there's some accident just like happened in this seminar. And I think these kind of features to allow the participants to unmute themselves is very important during the online meeting. Otherwise, it's kind of more like a one-way interaction. It's like just us as a teacher delivering materials without any feedbacks directly, immediately from the students. Next one, the tip number 3, to improve the collaboration, to promote the collaboration among students. I suggest all of you to try using a whiteboard or some collaborative board, just like this one, Miro. This is one that I use. And I believe that they still provide the educational license for the subscription, so we can benefit from this tool. And as you can see on the picture on the right side, they are really excited about the learning. So I allow them to give some emoji, some expressions, some thoughts, some ideas freely on the board. And this is very interactive. And I believe with this kind of a learning, we can make the learning effectivity also increase. And this will lead us to the next topic, that actually from several academical papers, we may find that interactive learning is actually leads to some effective learning, despite the degree. So it can be for undergraduate students, or even for junior, senior, kindergarten, basic school, and also for the graduate students. However, it's okay. But then now let's try to give some thought, some focus on particular tips on delivering an effective learning. Starting with the definition, again, from the English dictionary, we may see that here that the effective means something that productive, that meets our desired effect, and actual. So depart from this perspective, maybe I'm just gonna skip this one because the time is quite limited. I'm just gonna go with the tips. So the tip number 4 for effective learning, we can administer trivial survey using, for example, Mentimeter, just like what it has been shown on the previous slide, or using quizzes or Kahoot, something like that, to deliver more fun, interactive, yet effective way to assess the learning of the students. This is tip number 4. Go to the next one. Tip number 5. We have this another case. I'm sorry, this is a specific case. Actually, if you download my slides from the SPADA, from our learning management system, you can find the link in here. You can just click on it and you can check the video directly. I deliver all the tips in here with the example, so you can just check on it directly. Tips number 5. when while dealing when we need to deal with the bored students, because keep staring our eyes on the screen is pretty much boring for all people, for everyone, so including our students. So to ensure that they can they can keep concentrate or keep focusing on our teaching, we should alternate our materials, our media that we use to deliver our materials. One of them is by avoiding using PPT only. You may use a whiteboard if necessary, physical whiteboard, just like on the top right side in here, or the digital whiteboard. I believe many applications provides this feature, so you can just grab it and use it collaboratively with your students. So in this case, we can support the auditory, kinesthetic, and visual learning in one time. Okay, the next one, making use of games and VR. This is the case when in ITS, we use Minecraft for our online graduation. And also I use it for learning and also for student orientation, as you can see in here. You can click on the link to see the news later. And I also use VR for conducting advisory with my student to talk or discuss about his undergraduate thesis progress. So this is me and one of my students in here. So this is one of the way to make use games and VR for effective learning. The next one, tips number 6, last but not least, I believe we may need to learn unity from content creators since they have successfully attracted our students. You can see all over the world that everyone is getting addicted to see game in live. And live streamers is kind of very popular in YouTube right now. And we can learn from them. We try to be more actual, be more master streaming and audio mixing software. Okay, time is up actually. Okay. And to invest on streaming hardware. For example, the green screen and then the lighting and some good microphone for the audio. So this interactive and effective learning is for us to reach the bottom cone of Edgar Dell's learning over here. Hopefully we can make it, all of us. Okay, so this is to summarize all these 6 tips that we can use during our teaching and to improve the learning of our students. So using on-paper work, filters freely, and then using collaborative board, using Mentimeter surveys and trivia tests like quizzes, and then whiteboard as an additional presentation media in addition to the PowerPoint slides. And then let's learn to be live streamers. Thank you very much. That's all. I hand back to Bu Ida. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Haziq, for your presentation. Very interesting to see you in the corner of your slide, and also for some tips for lecturers in designing and also delivery the interactive learning in the classroom. So I'd like now to invite the second speaker from Indonesian side, from Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha, Professor Ninyoman Padmadewi, who will share her topic on digital literacy gap. And Professor Padmadewi, I'd like to read your short CV before you present your presentation. So Professor Padmadewi is the head of the English Language Education Department, postgraduate program at Ganesha University of Education. She finished her doctoral degree from Udayana University, and her research focus are in the area of English education. She is also examiner and co-promoter on sociolinguistics, pragmatics, and discourse studies. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Padmadewi. Ibu Padma, you're still unmute. Bu Batma, can you unmute yourself? Yes.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Ibu Ida, for giving me the chance to talk about and share my ideas about literacy. Everyone, good morning, good afternoon. It is very precious for me to be here now to share my ideas about literacy, actually, the part that I'm assigned to. Well, I start my presentation by reminding again about the concept of literacy, which it is so important to be discussed again here. Why? Because we have known that literacy is so important in our life. I quoted several quotations to share about what is meant by literacy. So from the sources that I quoted, we can define that literacy can be defined as the ability to read and write, from which other literacy will be developed. We all agreed that literacy is so important in our life. And because of that, we cannot deny that the importance of literacy need to be taken into consideration and given more attention. Why? Because I would like to remind us again about the cases or the data about Indonesia literacy rate ranking. I think this number, this figure has been very well known to my Indonesian colleague. And from the data, it is stated that Indonesian students still have very low literacy skill compared with students from other countries. Even in 2008, the data from PISA Center, it is informed that Indonesian student rate of literacy still ranked number 72 out of 7 countries involved. So what does it mean to us? It is very clear that the problem, the challenge that faced by all teachers, lecturers are still about dealing with how literacy can be improved. Nowadays, we are in the era of 21st century where all the learning sources are mostly in English. So we can say that literacy in English is very much highly needed at the moment. And we can say that at the moment we are having the challenge of using technology. So even though we understand that technology is highly important, for me, what is more important is that how the student literacy skills, especially in English, need to be improved. Not only literacy of Indonesian students is very low. What is also, very observable is that literacy is mostly for school assignment only. We find out that literacy provided is still only to fulfill the assignment provided in school. So we find that the link and match between the achievement of students in school and the need of employment and also the need of life, sometimes it's not matched. Students can have very high score, but they are not able to use the literacy skill in their life. So that is the fact that we often find. Besides that, we also see that the students are still not really self-directed. Students still depends on the teacher, the lecturers. And for that reason, I would like to remind you again about the demands that we now are facing. We are needed to shift our paradigm in education from pedagogy, where the teacher is still the center, to andragogy, where the students are expected to be able to be self-directed, to be self-regulated, to utagogy, how the student are expected to be able to be self-determined, to be able to be the problem solver. And also pedagogy, how the students are able to build networking, to make communication, to make collaboration with other students, might be in another part of the globe. So it is very highly important how the students are expected to have high literacy skills. And at the moment, especially with the pandemic that we are facing at the moment, what is very highly important and needed at the moment, how the students are able to engage in technology environment. From these phenomena, we can confirm that the challenge that we are facing at the moment is not only about how technology and online learning can be used as a kind of tools for the teachers to improve the literacy skill of the student, but how actually the student character, the student soft skill, how the student's self-directness, self-initiative, being problem solver can be really improved, because that is so needed nowadays. So what I can actually can list here the gaps and current problem that we are facing at the moment. It can be listed as follows. The activity of literacy is still focused on fulfilling the school tasks and exercises. The teaching is not yet emphasizing on real life application, real life need. COVID-19, which is still happening now, makes many precious literacy programs stuck. Many teachers still do not have sufficient knowledge and skills of how literacy program conducted online in innovative ways. Teachers' skill in using technology for teaching literacy need to be improved. So based on that one, so what is needed actually in the context of literacy? So in order to be able to give more skills for the students, what is recommended is that how does the teachers or the student can be provided more on literacy for life, which is often called as real life literacy. In the process of teaching, in order the student are having good literacy skills, it is expected that the values, say that pedagogy, cybergogy need to be promoted. So the student will have the sufficient literacy skills so that they are expected to be able, how they are able to learn from many sources available using the literacy skill that they have. So then they are expected to be able to have transmedia literacy skills, how they are able to make use of any sources to improve their literacy. It is expected that by giving that kind of, practices in the classroom for two students, it is expected autonomous learning can be created and promoted, which lead to literacy for their life. The students not only are able to improve their skills, but they are expected to be able to contribute in this era, and they are able to survive in this era. How this can be done, I would like to give a bit more practical information based on the best practices that we do. Padma Dewi Artini 2018 introduced a kind of literacy for life. It is stated that in order to do literacy for life, there are three stages that can be done. The first one is induction stage. The second one is implementation stage, and the next one is establishment stage. This is so important to be manifested, to be elaborated into activities and programs. So then the idea of, so the purpose of having the student having the skill in literacy can be built, Right, now the first one, induction stage. This is the area where the students' literacy need to be given any kind of orientation. It looks like very simple, very trivial, and it is so important. Why? Because the problem of Indonesian students is that they are not having the habit of reading yet. Like I told you before, the process of doing any literacy activities are mostly to fulfill the assignment at school. So how to build the kind of hobby of reading, so literacy skill, which is internally driven, is still a great challenge for our teachers and lecturers. So what I would like to emphasize here, what can be done here is that how the school teachers, the lecturers provide literacy-rich environment. This is very important because the students, especially young learners, also junior high school students, find out how important literacy can be in their life. Practicing how to choose material. This is very important. We find out that this is a kind of embryo how initiative can be started to build, how self-independent can be started to build. It is so important that the adult or the lecturers or student give a kind of practice is how the student can choose the material for fulfill their needs. And here we need to have parent involvement. It is so important, especially for those still students of young learners, junior high especially. In online learning like pandemic happening at the moment, grade 1, 2, 3, 4 is more about involvement. It's more about parents' involvement. Why? Because the students are not able to help themselves yet. So it is so important to include parents, how parents can be involved in the process of teaching and learning. So it is a great challenge for anybody in English, in education university, to design any kind of application or to choose any kind of tools and how parents' involvement can be also, empowered in the process of learning. The next is implementation stage. And this one is so important, how the habit of reading, the habit of having literacy skills is internally driven, become part of their life. So what we find out is that using logbook and empowering literacy-based activities is so important. It seems to be very simple, but it is very powerful. The students are trained to read every day. I did research from elementary school into university students dealing with the use of book. And I found that asking the student to read every day, even for 10 minutes, and write it down in the logbook, really very important and a powerful tools in how habits of reading, habit of writing can be accelerated. So this kind of activity can be inserted not only in intracurricular activities, but also extracurricular or co-curricular activities. And the next is so important and often neglected sometimes is that how the follow-up activity. If, for example, the student have been able to have basic literacy skill, the next one is that how the student are given a kind of follow-up activity, practicing extensive reading and writing for real life literacy. And after they are able to do or to perform positive behavior, empowering reward system is so important. Everybody like to be appreciated. So then by giving a kind of reward system, then the student will be feeling appreciated and they understand what to be repeated and what positive behavior need to be maintained. This is the challenge that I find out, that how to provide any activities which are literacy based during online learning is still very challenging for all teachers at the moment, even though we understand that technology is a tool, but then how to make them able to use the tools and at the same time are able to make the student engage, the student able to make interaction, the student are able to really build the self-directness and innovation and also self-initiative is really a great challenge for the teachers.
Okay. Professor Padmadewi, 1 minute more, please.
Okay, thank you so much. So what is important here is that how the role of the teachers to provide the student with the support system. This is so important. I like the word used by Export et al. 2009 about scaffolding literacy. So in this one, how the teachers, lecturers are able to create, to design any activities which function as a kind of scaffolding, which give guidance step by step, and then the guidance can be minimized slowly until the students are ready to be independent. This is again the challenge that we have. So the teachers need to be informed, need to be empowered, how they are able to design the support in the form of scaffolding literacy activities. So what can be actually also remember that the learning of literacy can be emphasized more as task or project-based instead of only in the form of exercise. This is so important in order the students are given a chance of real ability using their authentic competency, how they are able to have link and match literacy skills. So what they learn in school is the same with what they face in reality in their life. So what I want to conclude is that the challenge and the gap happen at the moment in the teaching of literacy and the learning of literacy is not only about how online learning and how technology can be used nowadays, but what is more important and more complex is that how the habit of reading can be formed and how the students are able to be self-directed, how they are able to have self-initiative, how they are able to be the problem solver for their life. So then they are able to use their literacy skills, their transmedia literacy skill to learn from many sources, so they are able to survive in this kind of era at the moment. I think that's all I can say today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Professor Padmadewi, for your sharing on some practical steps for the teachers to improve the literacy for life for the students in the online teaching and learning process in our classroom. So I'd like to invite Professor Daryono to share his experience about enhancing social presence in online learning. Professor Daryono is from Universitas Terbuka or Open University in Indonesia, and he is a permanent professor in the field of law and is currently the head of Center for Research and Innovation at Universitas Terbuka. He completed his PhD from the Faculty of Law, Australian National University. He is now a team leader from Universitas Terbuka for a collaborative research project with 8 universities in Southeast Asia and Europe, funded by European Union Erasmus+. So, Professor Daryono, the screen is yours. Professor Daryono, I cannot hear your voice yet. Could you please unmute yourself? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ibu Ida, for the introductions. And can you hear my voice clear now? Ibu
Very
Ida?
clear.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. Thank you. And very good day, all of the distinguished speaker, presenter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Daryono. I'm from Universitas Terbuka. It is my great honor to present Universitas Terbuka experiences in enhancing the social presence during the online learning. That is the most challenging task especially for the instructor. It is undeniable that the social presence is one of the important factors to students' engagement and retentions. As I recall, Professor Nizam mentioned in the opening remark that during the online learning, students are also expected to doing something, practicing something. That's quite one of the tasks that we are going to discuss in our presentations. UT has been experiencing to deliver online learning more than 15 years. But as the technology always grow very fast, we are also facing challenging times to make a continuous adjustment and also continuous improvement. Before I start my topics, I would like to share at glance what actually our operations, the UT operations, and where actually our students are. We are serving about more than 300,000 students in Indonesia and about 2,000 students overseas. So we can see on this scope of our services, it's not only for the Indonesians, but we are also covering the overseas students, students who living overseas. So this is the scope and the backgrounds of our services that quite challenging for us in order to give a more effective learning through the online. Then I'm recalling back to the social presence. One of the prominent theoretical framework that used by the online learning is the community of inquiry. COI present three important requirements of the successful online learning: the cognitive, teaching, and social presence. So I'm not going to discuss on those two former domains of cognitive and teaching presence, because I think those domains are very familiar with our current practices as an instructor or as an lecturer. And in these sessions, I'm more focusing on the social presence that is quite critical and relatively new in online learning settings. The social presence is basically the ability of how students may be able to identify themselves as part of the learning community, because this is very important. So why actually the social presence is very important in online learning settings? The recent studies shows that generally argued the social presence is an important attribute of the online learning, because learning is a social process in which the knowledge is socially constructed, and students will also discover the meaning of the learnings based on social experiences. So this is quite important, why the social presence need to be ensured to be practiced in an online environments. I think so we agree that all of the universities, education sectors, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we sudden transform into online. So there is quite misconception widespread related to the transformations of the face-to-face into online learning. Many of them is only view that the online learning is only dealing with the delivery method and technology. So it's therefore a kind of overlook the underlying factors of the successful online learning, including the pedagogy that we choose, the curriculum design that we have to develop, the staff and student support that are available, and also especially the course design that we are going to pursue. So those kind of the underlying factors, it's very substantial to the success of the online learning. So I would like to share on how we design our online courses that is suitable to our platform. We are using a Moodle as our platform, and the need of our students, which range from the low bandwidth infrastructure living in remote areas through the student who living in cities that have broadband facilities. We are using a common features of the Moodle and a number of the external plugin with the learning tool interoperability. We are also integrating the H5P authoring tools for the interactive contents. So this is part of how we design our online learning, online courses that is suitable to our student need and the platform of Moodles. And we are adopting the ABC learning design. I think all of you may already familiar with the ABC learning design that was invented by the UCL, University of College London. So the UCL learning design is quite practical. It's very practical framework to be used that can be adjusted quite easily, even by the inexperienced instructor in online learning. So based on the ABC learning design, we are identifying the learning activities, learning tools that is available in a Moodle or in any platform, learning management system platform, then across with the appropriate learning tools that we are going to pursue. For example, in collaborations, learning activity that we are going to project on our online learning management system would be discussion, teamwork, working projects, then the available learning tools that we are going to use can be coming from several tools. For example, forum, chat, wiki, glossaries, database, collaborate, and etc. So this is all of the learning tools that is available in a Moodle or even in a plugin that can be used by our instructor. So I think UCL, ABC Learning Design UCL, give us a quite fancy and very helpful tools in order to find appropriate learning tools in our learning design. So this is the learning tools wheel that's invented by the UCL. That is very helpful for us. So if we are going to achieve on a productions learning style on the production, then we can use several learning tools that's available. For example, my portfolio, Lightbox Gallery, blog, and etc. So I think it's very good tools for all of us to adopt this learning tool wheel as a instrument for developing more social engagement and social presence in our online learning environments. So how actually the impact of this design on our student online engagement? So I think based on this analytics, we can see that student activities were remarkable during the weeks and almost 24 hours, 7 days a week. So all of our students' activities, I think it started from the 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. from Sunday to, I think from Sunday to Saturday. So almost 7 days a week. If I'm projecting on a student in per day activities, it seems that most of our students' activities seem to be from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So this is important for all of the instructors or tutors in order to be online with our students during this time. Because during this time, students are quite active in our platform. I'm comparing the 2020 and 2019 figures. It shows that almost 200% users increases during the 1 year period. So, for example, the straight line was in 2020 figures, but the dot line is a 2019 figures. So you can see on the comparison between two, it's quite remarkable changing. Even on the sessions activities, on users increase, and also the durations of the access. Yeah, this is the geographic conditions of our student access, that UT students located across the globe, but the majority are in Indonesia. So this is the in Indonesia itself. I think the majority of our students are in Java and South Sumatra, but a number of our students also in South Sulawesi and also in North Sumatra. So this is the activities or the location of our students across the countries. Yeah. Okay. I think I would conclude my presentations that basically the social presence need to be nurtured and well designed. So it's not voluntary. So in our course design have to be well designed prior to the online courses deployment. And using the appropriate technology will create and maintain the social presence. And I think once it's developed, there need a sustenance of the social presence to create and to develop a community of learners. And of course, at the end, we are going to develop lifelong learning communities. Okay, thank you all. And I return back to Ibu Ida.
Thank you, Professor Daryono, for your sharing on the practical ways to improve the social existence in our online classroom through the ABC learning design. Yeah, I learned that your presentation is pretty similar with Ibu Nyoman Padmadewi and Nyoman Padmadewi, and also to Professor Mundy. Yeah, he was also talking about collaborating and also community, which is pretty close with social existence in our online learning and teaching. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite the last but not least speaker from Indonesia, Dr. Muhammad Adri from Padang State University. Dr. Adri, please be ready with your presentation. I'd like to introduce you to the participants. Dr. Adri completed his doctoral degree at Padang State University. He is the lecturer at Universitas Negeri Padang and currently the expert staff of the Center of Learning Development at Universitas Negeri Padang, as well as the IT member of the online learning system of Ministry of Education and Culture, Republic of Indonesia, that we all know as PADA. His research interest is in the area of blended learning environment development based on learning management system. Dr. Adri will be presenting on the topic of case study and practical fields on software education engineering. Dr. Adri, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Bu Ida. Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Because I worry about my microphone. Yeah, I think there is any trouble. Okay. Thank you to all the speaker, participant, and organizer of this event. All right, this is now my turn to present case study and practical field on how to conduct learning with the support of information technology, especially on online learning technology in our webinar on delivering online learning and using appropriate technologies. Dear Prof. Nizam, Director of General of the Directorate of Higher Education, Ministry of Education and Culture, Republic Indonesia, and all level of leadership in Directorate of Higher Education. In this event, I will describe my experience in developing a learning environment called by blended learning, as we know, as effort to increasing student engagement in learning process. This blended learning development case study is carried out in the software analysis and design course or software engineering. Because this course is my subject in my study program. After 10 years in this course, the main problem then so far in the software engineering course is that the lecture consists of 3 hours of theoretical learning without sorry, I forgot to share my presentation. Yeah. 3 hours of theoretical learning without the support of practicum activities, so that students find it difficult to get an idea how the software development process is carried out in the industrial world. And so I try to develop a model to support accommodate with blended learning, including the best practice on software development by project-based learning, And to make sure the product is the real world project, I use the production based learning. In the early version of development, this model is what carried out by organizing learning with blended learning with the support of a learning management system. And students had an earlier opportunity to study online material, so that students had initial knowledge of learning material before face-to-face in the classroom. This process has provided significant change, increasing student understanding and knowledge in the software engineering process. But we realized that this step is only able to equip students with the cognitive aspect of Bloom taxonomy. What about the aspect of skill and attitude? Because it is precisely these two abilities that are needed and demanded in the industrial world. Based on this experience, it's necessary to make innovation effort in learning so that students get best practice experience in software development by integrating project-based learning and production-based learning into a blended learning environment. The learning model developed to support this goal is divided into 8 main steps, which are the integration of project and product-based learning into a blended learning environment. In this model, students learn independently through a learning management system related to other material and support such as presentation, videos, and document links related to the point to the topic, arranged in a weekly online learning chart, and will be explained later. An illustration of the model can be seen in the show, where the learning activity are carried out in 2 sections. The first section is online section, and the second section is classroom section. In the online section, the learning process is managed using the Moodle learning management system, and the software engineering curriculum is built based on software engineering body of knowledge and the Indonesian National Competency Qualification, or KKNI, in the field of computer science and informatics, especially in software engineering qualification defined by APCOM, the Association of Higher Education on Computer Science, which are then translated into interactive online learning content, which can be used by students in learning by themselves. In the face-to-face or classroom section, the activity begins with the education regarding online teaching material that students have previously studied in the online section, and then continue with the best practical aspect in software development. The step learning activity on software engineering with this model start by learning analysis. In this case, the lecturer analyze the student the prior knowledge of the student in software engineering, and then student access the course material and all the activity and online section. The third is about project and product definition. In this case, we divide the student into small group, consists of 4 to 5 students in one group. And the fourth step, design of project and product step. In this step, the student design their project based on discussion with the partner. In this case, the partner is stakeholder will be used the product of student project. And the fifth, the schedule of project and product, and then project and product process, and then the lecture periodically evaluate of the project and product of the student, and then finally we hope the software produced by student, they have ability to promotion and conduct a business plan, because in this model we hope we have a group of students have ability to create a startup organization in software engineering sector. And this is a software project development activity carried by students in 16 weeks of lectures. Consists of project and production-based control. The project-based learning is used as methodology to control project student, and production-based learning to control project product. To support this model, we have been developed some learning component as shown in this slide. The first one is perangkat pembelajaran, or that meaning in learning tool, the module learning, the model, instrument, teacher guide, and student guide. To make sure this model is good design, in developing this model, we have involved six experts from 6 universities in Indonesia with expertise in vocational education, blended learning, informatics, and educational technology, as well as 7 experts from Universitas Negeri Padang with the same expertise. In the online session, the learning content is grouped into 3 parts each week, namely introduction, learning resources, and learning activity. The introduction contains a brief explanation of online learning material and activities that will be followed by students. Learning resources include modules, presentation, video, and external material links that can be explored by students, while learning activity consists of the discussion, forum discussion, assignment, evaluation, and project reporting. Regarding the
one more minute, please.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Bu Ida. The software engineering material that has been complete, it consists of 14 topics covering aspects of the software engineering concept, analysis, design and implementation, and aspect of software integration. The following is an example of software product produced by students in collaboration with partners in developing certification service application at PT Pertanata West Sumatra, which is software that is needed by partner. And this is my explanation for the Australia-Indonesia virtual online higher education policy as a part of a case study and practical fit in software engineering education. Thank you. Back to you, Bu Ida.
Thank you very much, Adri, for sharing your experience on the development of blended project-based learning. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants and also speakers from both Indonesia and Australia who are still on Zoom, we have completed all of the sessions for all speakers from Australia and Indonesia. And now we are in the discussion session, question and answer session. And Unfortunately, Shelley, James, and Greta, and also Matthew has already left the Zoom room, but I can see that there are a lot of questions posted to them. You could send the questions directly to their email addresses, and I will read the email address from Shelley is shelley.kinash@usq.edu.au, and james.downs@mq.edu.au, greta.wilkinson@flinders.edu.au, and matthew.mundy@monash.edu. You can see the list of the emails in the chat box as well. And there will be only one session for our question and answer because the time is not much left anymore, and I will read the question from the link provided by the committee. One question for one speaker. Oh yeah, I'd like to also invite if Professor Anu is still in the room, in the chat, in the Zoom room. Professor Anu Ramohan, Associate Dean International, Professor of Economics, University of Western Australia. Are you still in the Zoom room? Okay, yeah. Professor Anu is also one of the members of the panelists of our today's webinar. And if she's still in the room, if you're still in the room, please give any signal to us so that I can. Oh, okay, right, okay. All right, so let me read the questions from the participants. The first question will be for Dr. Hazik. Yeah, can you give us tips to give good assessment for big class for more than 40 students effectively and also balance? From Ibu Yeni Andriani, Universitas Muhammadiyah Bandung.
Okay, thank you. This is very difficult question for me. So I also face some similar challenges, some similar difficulty when I need to deal with the huge classes. In this case, maybe I'm just gonna simply use, for the assessment, I would use multiple choice assessment more than other type of assessment. This to assess their cognitive knowledge, their cognitive skills. And for doing that, you can actually utilize many tools. In Moodle, we can create a quiz. In Microsoft Teams, we can also do the same, create an assignment that with the type of quiz, or maybe you can use the interactive type of tools, just like Kahoot, for this type of multiple choice assessment. In addition to that, if you really want to know about or would like to administer such an essay, I think you can also make it by just open some submission assignment through the Moodle, through the learning management service. But I think the only problem would be you will need more time, spending more time for checking or evaluating their feedbacks. But if you can do that, that will be very appreciated by the students, because during the online learning, what the students would like to have from you is your presence, the way you are present for them. One of the way is by giving them an actual feedback through this kind of submission. Okay, I think that's all maybe that I can give practically. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to Bu Ida.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Hazik, for giving very thorough answer for the question. It's not an easy question actually, but you can give a response very well. So I'd like to read the second question for Ibu Padma Dewi, Professor Padma Dewi. The question is from Novia Putri Mirani Dewi from Universitas Bunda Mulia. So she was wondering what will the best approach to university students who are at the verge of emerging into adulthood to be more proactive in studying in general and to be ready for enormous challenges present in this decade. Please, Professor Padmadewi, could you please unmute yourself?
Okay. Thank you so much for the questions provided to me. I think if you are dealing with students who are in the first grade university want to be immersed in that kind of situation, there are three approaches that I would like you to reconsider to be used. The first one is individual differentiated instruction. The second one is constructivism. The last one is the whole person approach. What is meant by differentiated instruction? In order to suit what is needed is to suit the need of the student, you need to be able to design any learning material which is suited to the need of the student based on the level that they have. Of course, we cannot extremely make one, difference the student individually. You can have a kind of classification, or you can have kind of cluster. Say, for example, the student who are really a bit higher, advanced, average, or left behind. So you can arrange different material for them. So then the student will be really happily learn because of the material are in their level. The next one is constructivism. In this philosophy, the students are given a kind of direct experience. By giving them direct experiences, they will be able to construct a new knowledge based on the experiences that they have. The last one is the whole person approach. This approach is actually consider the student as the unite, a complete unity, where the student have cognitive, affective, and psychomotoric. So in this pandemic era, it's so important to balance the student with something which is not only cognitive only. You can have, or you can give them a kind of project which is not only academically, but can be also part of the aspect like affective and psychomotoric domain to be developed. So with those one, that is kind of philosophy approaches, and you need to manifest with any kind of activities or any kind of programs, strategies, and a technique which need your creativity in order to embrace the three philosophies that I mentioned before. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Padmadewi, for your philosophical answer for the philosophical question as well. And let me move to the third question posted to Professor Daryono. This is quite a bigger perspective on education. How to design the education strategies, Professor Daryono? The question is from Pak Danang Susena from Unwida, Klaten. The screen is yours, Pak.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ibu Ida, and thank you, Pak Danang. It's yeah, that's very macro perspective, though. So I think yes, definitely. I think for the next new normal, I think online learning would be embedded in our educational systems. It's not only for face-to-face interactions, but I'm assuming and I'm predicting that the online learning will be more powerful in order to give to enhance the engagement. For example, if we our students are reluctant to pose a question in our face-to-face interactions, then they may be quite enjoy if they do in online settings. So this is kind of a situation that we have to consider in order to design education system in a global or in a macro level or in a national level, that the online learning have to be embedded in our education systems, because it's more benefit for our students. And considering to, I think I will recall the Dicty survey regarding the online learning during the pandemic. There are quite many benefits that's already been received by students as well as instructors on the online learning. So for our tasks and our policymakers, I think we do need to prepare our students into the next industrial revolution 4.0 in order to give more competitive advantages to all of our graduates with our colleagues in ASEAN or in global. Okay, I think that's my response, Ibu Ida.
Thank you, Professor Daryono, for the answer. And the last question is for Dr. Adri. Dr. Adri, this question is actually for anyone, but I'd like to pose this question to you. Very simple one, very practical one. In online learning, how to make sure or monitor that the student is really attending if they do not use a video? I mean, you mean on cam, yeah, if they're not on cam, because the connection is not good. So it's always a good excuse here for the students of not showing their face on the camera. Do you have any practical solution for that, Dr. Adri?
Because thank you, Bu Ida. Because the internet connection is still become big problem in this country, in the 6-2 country. So if our student get problem about the connection into class, online learning class or blended learning class, sometimes we make some decision to forgive them, shut off their camera, but still join in web meeting like Zoom or Big Blue Button on Moodle. In this case, sometimes I use two methods in blended learning, synchronous and asynchronous approach, because we can to push our students still online in 3 hours course. So maybe in the 30-minute first, we give some suggestion to our student about the activity today. And then after that, the student will follow the learning activity with asynchronous approach through learning management system. I think like that, Bu Ida.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adri. Yes, Pak Daryono, do you? Yes,
okay,
please.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Ida.
Yeah.
Okay, just quick. Whenever we design our online learning, I think we have to leave our mindset related to the face-to-face.
Yes.
So when we design it on online learning, then we need to, I think the speaker and presenter from the OC already highlighted that we move to our learner-centered approach rather than a teacher-centered approach. In this case, I think we need to get students more involved with the activities, with the project, with the products that they need to pursue. So this is part of we have to change our mindset in related to the pedagogy that we have to embrace on the online learning. Okay, so basically from the test-based assessment, then we move to the performance-based assessment. That's okay. Thank you, Ibu Ida.
Thank you, Professor Daryono, for completing the answer. Ibu Padmadewi, would you like to add more or?
Thank you so much. I like to remind us again about the term assessment as learning, assessment for learning, assessment of learning. I usually try to combine many kinds of assessment in order to be able to be giving a kind of good feedback for my student. Many times I use reflection. I ask my student to have a kind of self-assessment. I ask them, say for example, I totally agree with Prof. Daryono. I ask my student to do a kind of performance-based assessment. And after that, I ask them to make a kind of reflection. What did you learn? How much do you think that you are succeeding on these topics? Things like that. And after that, I combine this one with assessment of learning, which is done by scoring, for example. And after that, I compare with the baseline, the condition of the student before that. So I consider many perspectives in order to be able to provide the student with the most feedback that we can give. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Padmadewi. A very simple question, but can trigger many answers from the panelists here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that I cannot read all of the questions that you sent in the link. And the last question was from Ibu Sri Halianti from Universitas Riau. Thank you very much for sending the questions to the speakers today, both to Australian and also to Indonesian speakers. And we have now come to the end of this event. I believe that we have learned many new ideas from the speakers from both countries, and we could adopt their experience, if possible, in our online classroom. And hopefully the sharing best practices today from the speakers may encourage us to improve the quality of our online learning delivery by using appropriate or relevant technologies. Thank you very much for all speakers from Indonesia and Australia who have shared your valuable experience. And please give a big round virtual applause for all of the speakers. And last but not least, I'd like to also thank you very much for all the participants for your active participation in our today's webinar. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Bu Yulita, the screen is over to you now, please.
Thank you, Wida. Thank you to all the presenters. It's very.
Thank you very much for everyone.
What saya?
Bu Yulita,
yes,
are you there? Yes,
sorry,
we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, because there's a pop-up in my screen. Okay, thank you very much to all. Next, for the last, I will ask, sorry, it's very interesting discussion and sharing experience. I believe that we got a lot of insight from this event. And once again, thank you for the presenters for the sharing. As information, all the presentation in this webinar will be uploaded at spada.mendikbud.go.id, and you can all download all the materials. Okay, for the closing remarks, we are pleased to invite Pak Professor Aris Junaidi, Director of Learning and Student Affairs. Prof. Aris.
Thank you, Ibu Rita.
The screen is yours, Bapak.
Thank you so much. And now we are at the end of the session, and I would like to thank to all the speaker, the presenter, and the moderator for the very inspiring and useful for us to learn about the online learning. And we have listened and to the material presentation from the speaker since this morning and up to this afternoon, and many new technology, knowledge, and experience has been conveyed, and we discussed together already. Online learning methods and materials must be of high quality by utilizing appropriate technology, obtaining interactive and effective learning to attract a student involvement in the learning process, increasing the ability of the academic community in utilizing the digital literacy. And together, we also continue to strive to collect the resources and knowledge, experience, in collaborating with the various parties and coupled with the Merdeka Campus Merdeka or Independent Campus program. Let's improve the quality of online learning together by making good and quality learning material so that they can be accepted and understood by our students. As we hope that the nation successor are to fare the nation independent and the increasing relevance of higher education to the need of industry, business, and the world of work. So whatever the challenges are in the process of educating the nation, especially in the higher education level, we work together to make it happen and success. So ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, hopefully the collaboration between the Director General of Higher Education, Ministry of Education and Culture, and the Australian University will provide insight the experiences that can be used for implementing the online learning. So once again, thank you so much for all the speaker and presenter and moderator, all the participants, and enjoying the rest of the day. So I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
you, Prof. Aris. Thank you for the closing remarks. Okay, we do all have a wonderful day today, and we would like to thank all of you to join this webinar again. Thank you, and hopefully we can meet again in other webinar agenda. Thank you very much, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih semuanya.
Thank you, Rita. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Halo tes.
Also Ibu Ida.
Thank you, Prof. Daryono,
Thank
Mas
you.
Dewi,
Terima kasih
Adri,
semua.
Pak Azik,
Thanks,
Bu
Ibu
Yulita.
Ida. Excellent,
Ya,
Ibu.
sama-sama.
Izin live,
Ya,
makasih.
izin live.
Terima kasih
Baik,
Bu.
Bapak Ibu, terima kasih semuanya.
Kita pamit
Izin menutup
ya,
room,
Bu
Bapak Ibu.
Yulita,
Terima kasih.
semuanya. Assalamualaikum.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih